Have you ever heard the expression, everything you need to know you learned in kindergarten? Right? And a lot of it goes to those basic rules of how to interact with each other. Although these days they would say that in preschool, right? Or transitional K and all these other formulations we have. But a lot of it is the same. Those rules actually quite are the basic building structures of interaction socially. It's just they become more robust and complex as we get older because our ability for human relationships becomes more robust and more complex as well, as adults especially. And it's about learning to engage that. When I was at the national gathering for the Quinto Encuentro Hispano, one of the speakers said, the gospel is simple, but it's not easy. And I think it follows along those lines. The first reading we had from John's letter, it's the core of Christian life. Love one another as Jesus has loved us. It's not a complicated or difficult thing to understand. But it's not easy to live. And the challenge of the disciples of Jesus is not to look at, does this need to change? But that every generation has to take up that truth, take up that way of life. Every generation has to make that choice. And individually we have to make that choice. And as a whole church, we need to make that choice across the world. Now, the complexity of the gospel comes in where we are living and where we have come from and our own struggles and how we learn to live out that commandment. And yes, that is part of the difficulty of being a disciple. But whatever discipline we decide to follow is going to have its challenges. Why not take on the challenge of being a disciple of the ever-living Son of God who opens to us new life by following him? That really is the core of it. When people ask us why we do what we do, how we stay working for this church, we have found the words of everlasting life. And yes, the humans who make up the church are very flawed beings. And we believe in a merciful and loving God who calls all of us to be our best, to become the saints he envisions us to be, all the while mercifully trying to help us deal with the problems and the issues we face ourselves, our own challenges and weaknesses. And so, my brothers and sisters, a lot of our work as disciples, I think, is to encourage each other to take up the good news, individually ourselves and all of us together as a church, and helping other generations not only to continue to carry it with them, but to encourage newer generations to take up that same good news. And the best way we can do that is to allow Christ to be present in us. And Christ becomes more present in us when we follow this commandment. The gospel is simple, but it's not easy. But it definitely is worth it.